He caught her arrow in midair, and now she must marry him. And now there is no refusal.
Amina had always loved the quiet mornings of her village.
The air was fresh, and the soft light of dawn touched the fields like a gentle brush. Every day she walked to the open ground outside the village, carrying her bow and a small quiver of arrows. Archery was more than a hobby for her. It was her passion, her escape from the noise of everyday life, and a way to test her focus and strength. Her parents often worried about her spending so much time alone, but Amina was independent and stubborn. She loved the feeling of drawing the bowstring, feeling the tension in her arms, and then releasing an arrow, watching it soar into the sky before it landed with a soft thud in the grass. This particular morning was different. A gentle breeze swayed the tall grass, and the sun was just rising, painting the horizon in shades of orange and pink. Amina set her quiver on the ground and knocked her first arrow. Breath. She raised her bow, took careful aim at the target she had set up, a simple wooden board with painted rings, and released. The arrow flew straight and fast, embedding itself cleanly in the center. A small smile of satisfaction spread across her face. She picked up another arrow, preparing for another shot when she sensed a movement from the corner of her eye. Someone was standing a short distance away, partially hidden by the tall grass. Amina froze for a moment, her heart beating faster than usual. She wasn't used to anyone being at the practice field. Most people in the village didn't venture this far, and she preferred it that way. The man stepped forward, revealing himself fully. He was tall and strong, with broad shoulders and a calm presence that seemed to fill the open space around him. His clothes were simple, but there was something in the way he carried himself that made it clear he was confident and capable. Amina's first instinct was to be wary, but something about his steady gaze felt strangely reassuring rather than threatening. "Good morning," he said in a clear, calm voice, "but I did not mean to startle you." Amina relaxed slightly and nodded. "Good morning."
"Who are you?" "My name is Rahim," he replied, giving a slight bow of his head. "I was traveling through the village and saw you practicing."
I could not resist watching someone with such skill.
Amina felt a mix of surprise and pride.
Compliments were rare, especially for something she loved so dearly. "I have been practicing for many years," she said, trying to hide her nervous excitement.
It is just something I enjoy." Rahim smiled. "I can see that."
But few people have such steady hands and focus.
"May I?"
He gestured toward the open space next to her. Amina hesitated. She was cautious, but something in his gentle demeanor made her want to trust him. "You may watch," she said, lowering her bow slightly. For the next few minutes she continued her practice, shooting arrows with precision and focus. Rahim observed silently, his eyes following each arrow as it flew. He did not interfere, did not comment, only watched with quiet attention. Amina felt a strange curiosity about him. Why had he stopped to watch? And why did she feel a little thrill of anticipation every time he looked at her? Finally feeling confident, Amina decided to try a challenging shot. She raised her bow high, aiming for a distant target she had set further than usual. She let the arrow fly with all her strength. Her eyes followed it as it climbed high into the air, higher than any arrow she had shot before. Then, to her complete astonishment, the arrow did not land in the grass as expected. Instead, Rahim had stepped forward, his hand outstretched, and caught the arrow in midair. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The villagers who had been quietly watching from the edge of the field gasped in amazement. Amina's heart pounded, a mix of shock, awe, and something she could not quite name. "Bah!" She stepped closer, unable to believe what had just happened. How did you do that?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. Rahim looked at her calmly, a faint smile playing on his lips. Patience, focus, and practice, he said simply.
Much like you have with your bow? Amina shook her head in disbelief. I have never seen anything like that in my life.
No one in the village could do this. Rahim shrugged modestly. Perhaps, but sometimes skill is hidden until someone challenges you. The moment felt almost magical. Amina could feel the energy in the air, the sense that something important had begun. She did not fully understand it, but the connection was undeniable. She had been proud of her skill before, but now she realized there were people out there, like Rahim, who could match her in unexpected ways. Word of the event spread quickly through the village. By midday, a small crowd had gathered around the practice field, eager to hear the story of how Rahim had caught Amina's arrow in midair. People whispered to each other in amazement. "Did you see that?" He caught her arrow without even moving his feet. "In all my years, I've never seen anything like it." The villagers were in awe, and Amina felt a mix of pride and embarrassment. She had never wanted attention, but the incident had made her the center of curiosity. Rahim, however, remained calm amidst the excitement. He did not boast, did not seek praise. Instead, he returned the arrow to Amina and bowed slightly. "Your skill is remarkable," he said sincerely. "It deserves admiration." Amina felt a warmth in her chest at his words. She had never heard such genuine respect for her abilities before. Most villagers had simply praised or joked about her skill, but Rahim's words carried meaning. She wanted to know more about him, this man who seemed both ordinary and extraordinary at the same time. Over the next few days, Rahim stayed near the village. He helped the villagers with small tasks, showing kindness and strength in ways that impressed everyone. Yet, he always found moments to visit Amina, asking about her archery and sharing stories of his travels. Slowly, a bond began to form, built on mutual respect and curiosity. Amina, who had always valued her independence, felt something shift inside her. She was drawn to Rahim's calm confidence, his gentle humor, and the way he seemed to understand her without trying too hard. At the same time, she remained cautious. She had been raised to think carefully about the people she trusted, and she did not want to rush into anything, no matter how magical the arrow incident had been. First day, she found herself glancing at him, wondering if he was watching. She felt a thrill when he appeared, as if the arrow he had caught had not only changed the path of her shot, but also the path of her life. The incident of the arrow in midair became the talk of the village for weeks, but for Amina, it was more than a story. It was the beginning of something she could not yet name. It was a moment that had altered her sense of what was possible, a moment that hinted at connection, challenge, and perhaps even destiny. And as the sun set each evening, casting golden light over the fields where she had trained for years, Amina realized that her life had changed in ways she could not fully understand. She did not know what the future held, but she knew one thing clearly. The stranger who had caught her arrow had left a mark on her heart, one that would not fade no matter where life took them. The morning after the arrow incident, Amina woke up with a mixture of excitement and worry. Her heart still raced when she thought of Rahim, the man who had caught her arrow midair. She wondered why he had come to the village and why he had chosen to watch her practice. She shook her head, trying to focus on her morning chores. But her thoughts kept drifting back to him. Narration. Something about him was different. He was not like the other men in the village. There was a calm strength in his presence that drew her in, even as it made her feel nervous. By the time she reached the practice field, Rahim was already there. He had arrived quietly, carrying no bow or arrow, just a small satchel over his shoulder. When he saw her, he smiled warmly. "Good morning, Amina," he said. "Are you ready to continue your practice?"
Amina hesitated. I
I don't know. People are already talking about what happened yesterday. Her cheeks flushed as she remembered the whispers of the villagers who had seen him catch her arrow. They think it was some kind of sign that I should. She trailed off, unsure how to finish. Rahim's smile remained calm and reassuring. A sign? He asked gently. Of what? Amina looked down at her hands, fidgeting with an arrow. They say that if a man catches a woman's arrow, it means she is meant to be with him.
I don't believe in such things, but they are saying it anyway.
Breath. Rahim's expression softened. Ignore them. People often speak without understanding. Pit. What matters is your choice, not the opinions of others.
Her heart lifted a little at his words.
He was different. She realized. He did not pressure her, nor did he act as if she owed him anything. Instead, he seemed genuinely interested in her thoughts and feelings. That calm patience was something she had never experienced before, and it made her curious to know more about him. Over the next few days, Rahim continued to visit the field. He did not bring a bow, but he would sit quietly and watch her practice. Sometimes he would offer small tips, like adjusting her stance or aiming slightly differently to account for the wind. His advice was simple, yet effective. Amina found herself improving quickly, and she began to admire not just his skill but his knowledge and patience. The villagers could not help but notice the growing connection between the two. They whispered among themselves, some teasing, some curious.
Look at them, one woman said. They are always together now.
I suppose she will marry him soon. Others nodded, repeating the story of the arrow in midair as if it had sealed their fate. Amina overheard snippets of their conversation and felt a mix of irritation and embarrassment. She had never wanted to be the center of attention, and now it seemed the whole village was watching her every move. Despite the gossip, Amina found herself looking forward to Rahim's visits. They began talking more openly, sharing stories about their lives. Rahim told her about his childhood in a distant town, where he had lost his parents at a young age. He had learned to survive by working hard, helping others, and relying on his own strength. He had traveled from village to village, offering assistance when needed, and learning about people and their ways of life. Amina listened intently. She had never met someone with such a varied and challenging life. She admired his resilience and the way he faced difficulties without bitterness.
In return, she shared her own story, how she had grown up in the village, learning archery from her father, who had passed away when she was young. She talked about her dreams, her fears, and her love for the open fields where she could practice freely.
As they talked, Amina noticed something else. She felt comfortable with him. She could speak freely without fear of judgment. Rahim listened carefully, asked thoughtful questions, and respected her opinions. He never interrupted or belittled her, and she realized that was rare. Most people, she thought, did not take the time to truly listen. One afternoon, after a particularly long practice session, Rahim suggested a small challenge. "Let us see who can hit the target more accurately," he said, smiling. "No pressure, just for fun." Amina agreed, though she was hesitant. She had never competed with anyone before, preferring to practice alone, but something about Rahim's friendly demeanor made her want to try. They took turns shooting arrows, laughing at small mistakes, and cheering at good shots. By the end of the session, both had performed admirably.
Amina could not remember the last time she had laughed so freely, and she realized she had never felt such lightness in her heart. The playful competition became a routine.
Every morning, they met at the field, practicing, talking, and laughing together. The villagers began to notice, some quietly approving, others gossiping more loudly. But Amina no longer cared. She felt a new sense of confidence and independence, knowing she had the freedom to choose her path. Despite the growing closeness, Amina remained cautious. She had heard the whispers about the arrow and the expectations that followed. He was strong-willed and determined not to let tradition or gossip dictate her life. At the same time, she could not deny the bond forming between her and Rahim. His presence had become a source of comfort, excitement, and curiosity. She often wondered if he felt the same connection, or if it was only in her imagination. Rahim, for his part, was patient. He noticed her hesitation and never pushed. He respected her space and her independence, knowing that trust and friendship were the foundations of any meaningful relationship. He admired her courage, skill, and determination, and he wanted to earn her trust rather than demand it. One evening, as the sun began to set and the sky turned shades of gold and pink, Amina and Rahim sat on a small hill overlooking the fields. The air was warm, and a gentle breeze carried the scent of flowers and grass. Amina rested her bow beside her, feeling tired but happy. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for being patient, for all listening, for not pressuring me."
Rain.
"You are welcome. I believe that the most important things cannot be forced. Pray. Friendship, respect, trust. They must grow naturally or they will not last." Amina nodded, feeling a sense of relief wash over her. Braish. She realized that her initial fear, that the arrow incident had created an expectation she could not meet, was fading. Rahim's presence had turned that fear into understanding, and slowly into something more, something she could not yet name. Over the next few weeks, their bond deepened. They shared stories of childhood adventures, favorite books, and dreams for the future. Rahim taught her small survival skills he had learned during his travels, while she shared the secrets of archery that her father had taught her. Their conversations were filled with laughter, curiosity, and respect. One day, while walking along the edge of the forest near the village, Amina stopped to watch a bird take flight. Rahim stood beside her, silent for a moment, watching the bird too. "You have a keen eye," he said softly. "You notice things most people overlook." Amina smiled, feeling seen and appreciated in a way she had not felt before. "I think everyone notices something, if they take the time to look carefully," she replied. Rahim nodded.
And you do.
"That is why your arrows fly so true. You observe, you focus, you understand." Amina felt a warmth in her heart, a mix of pride and connection. She realized that her feelings for Rahim were growing, but she also understood that love, or something like it, could not be rushed. She wanted to know him fully, to understand him as he understood her, before making any decisions. The villagers continued to watch, whisper, and speculate. Some even joked that the arrow had chosen him, that Amina would have no choice but to marry Rahim. Amina heard the rumors but ignored them. She knew that her choice was hers alone, and she valued Rahim's respect for her independence more than anything else. By the end of the month, Amina and Rahim had formed a quiet rhythm. Their friendship was strong, built on shared experiences, mutual respect, and the thrill of discovery. They practiced archery together, learned from each other, and laughed at their mistakes. And while the villagers continued to gossip, Amina felt a sense of freedom she had never known. She could choose her path, and she could do it with someone who truly understood and respected her. As the sun set each day, painting the fields in gold, Amina knew that her life had changed in ways she could not yet fully comprehend. The arrow in midair had been more than a remarkable feat. It had been the beginning of a connection that might shape her future. She did not know what lay ahead, but she felt ready to face it, with courage, wisdom, and the growing bond with Rahim by her side. As the days passed, the bond between Amina and Rahim grew stronger. They spent almost every morning together at the practice field, perfecting her archery and sharing stories. But it wasn't just archery that connected them. It was the quiet understanding, the way Rahim listened to her without judgment, and the way Amina could speak freely about her thoughts and fears. In the beginning, their relationship had been cautious, almost hesitant. But now it had grown into a companionship that was comforting and exciting at the same time. Amina noticed how easily she could laugh around him. Even small things, like a missed arrow or a playful joke, became moments of connection. Rahim would laugh too, not mockingly, but with a genuine warmth that made her feel lighter, as if a weight she had carried for years was slowly lifting.
Her days, once routine and solitary, now felt alive with new energy.
Yet not everything was simple. The villagers, as always, had their opinions. Some were supportive in quiet ways, noticing the respect and care Rahim showed Amina. Others, however, whispered constantly, hinting that the arrow incident meant something more.
"She cannot ignore it forever," one woman said as she drew water from the village well. "The arrow chose him."
It is only a matter of time before she agrees.
Amina, overhearing such remarks, felt irritation and discomfort. She had always valued her independence and hated the idea that anyone, or any tradition, could dictate her choices.
She did not want to be forced into anything, and yet the pressure around her was growing. The whispers and stares reminded her that everyone was watching, judging, and expecting her to act in a certain way. One afternoon after a long practice session, Amina and Rahim walked toward the edge of the forest. The sunlight streamed through the trees, casting warm patterns on the ground. Amina had been silent for much of the walk, lost in thought. Rahim noticed and gently asked, "Are you troubled?" Amina hesitated before answering. "People are talking, and I do not want to be pressured. I do not want my life to be decided for me."
Rahim nodded thoughtfully. "I understand, and I would never want to pressure you."
Your choices, your life, they belong to you alone. Hearing these words, Amina felt a mixture of relief and admiration.
Few people in her life had ever spoken with such understanding.
Most adults in the village, even those who cared for her, seemed to believe that tradition mattered more than personal choice. Rahim, however, made her feel safe. He made her feel that her voice mattered, that her feelings were important. Despite the reassurance, Amina could not deny that her feelings for Rahim were growing. She admired his strength, his courage, and the kindness he showed not only to her, but also to the villagers. He was brave, yet humble, skilled, yet patient. She found herself thinking about him during the day, wondering what he was doing, hoping he would come to the field, and feeling a strange excitement when she saw him approaching.
Rahim, too, was aware of the deepening bond between them.
He admired Amina's skill, her determination, and her independence. But he also noticed her hesitation, the careful way she guarded her heart and her choices.
He did not want to rush her or impose any expectation. Instead, he chose patience, believing that trust and respect were stronger foundations than force or tradition.
One day, while practicing together, Amina decided to challenge herself further. She aimed at a target far beyond the usual range. Rahim watched her carefully, his eyes following every movement. She drew the bowstring with all her strength and released the arrow. It soared through the air, spinning gracefully before landing just shy of the target. Amina frowned in disappointment, but Rahim clapped his hands softly.
"Well done," he said. "That was a strong and precise shot."
You pushed yourself further than before. That is progress. Amina felt a small smile form on her lips. Progress, she repeated, thinking about how her life had changed over the past weeks. She had been practicing archery for years, but something about Rahim's presence pushed her to improve, to try harder, and to believe in herself more. As they rested under a tree, Rahim shared stories from his travels, tales of distant villages, forests, and mountains he had seen. Amina listened, fascinated by his experiences, realizing that he had seen more of the world than anyone she knew. In turn, she told them stories of her childhood, of her father teaching her archery, of the lessons she had learned growing up in the village. Their stories intertwined, creating a sense of intimacy that neither of them had anticipated. However, as much as they enjoyed each other's company, the outside world continued to intrude. The villagers' gossip became more frequent, and some even tried to approach Amina about the supposed arrow tradition. "Why can't they understand?" she asked Rahim one evening. "Why do they think they can decide my life for me?" Rahim took her hand gently.
Because people often cling to old rules and stories, he said softly. But that does not define who you are or who you choose to be. Let their words pass like wind. Your heart knows what is right.
Amina looked at him, her heart swelling with a mix of gratitude and emotion. For the first time, she felt that someone truly understood her, not just her skill, but her feelings, her fears, and her dreams. It was a new sensation, powerful and comforting all at once. Days turned into weeks, and Amina and Rahim's friendship deepened further. Breaths. They began to share small moments outside the practice field, helping the villagers with chores, walking along the river, or simply sitting under a tree watching the clouds. With each shared experience, they learned more about each other's strengths and vulnerabilities. One afternoon, Rahim noticed that Amina seemed unusually quiet. He had grown attentive to her moods over the past weeks, and he gently asked, "Is something troubling you, Amina?" Amina hesitated.
I worry that people will never leave me alone, she admitted.
But they will always expect me to do what they think is right, not what I feel is right. Rahim nodded, understanding. Then we must show them that your choices belong to you alone, he said. No tradition, no story, and no expectation can dictate your life. Only you can decide your path.
Amina felt a deep sense of relief.
His words were not just comforting. They were empowering.
She realized that her fear of being forced into a decision had lessened because Rahim respected her.
Breath. He was different from anyone she had known. He did not demand, he did not pressure, and he never treated her as if she were lesser for being independent. That evening, as the sun set over the fields, Amina and Rahim sat together, watching the golden light fall across the land. There was a gentle quiet between them, filled not with words but with understanding. Amina felt a sense of peace, knowing that no matter what the villagers said, she had someone by her side who valued her choices and respected her heart. But the growing bond also brought new feelings she could not ignore. She admired Rahim's strength, his kindness, and his bravery, and she realized that her respect and trust for him were slowly turning into something more, something she was hesitant to name, yet could not deny. At the same time, she felt cautious. She had learned from life that feelings could be fragile, and she wanted to ensure that anything between them grew naturally, without pressure or expectation. Rahim noticed the subtle changes too, the way she lingered near him, the soft smiles she gave, and the gentle curiosity in her eyes. He admired her courage, her skill, and her independence. He knew that if their bond were to grow further, it must be built on trust, respect, and freedom of choice. He was determined to wait patiently, to ensure that any step forward was taken with mutual understanding and desire. The villagers continued their whispers and speculations, but Amina no longer let them affect her. She had found her own sense of strength and clarity, and she knew that Rahim's presence was not an imposition, but a support. She began to see that life could hold connection and companionship without losing independence, and that the right bond would honor both hearts equally. By the end of this period, Amina and Rahim had created a world of their own within the village, a world of respect, understanding, laughter, and shared growth. The arrow in midair, once just a remarkable feat, had become a symbol of their meeting, a turning point that had brought two independent souls together without force, without expectation, and without judgment. And though challenges still lay ahead, Amina knew one thing with certainty. Her bond with Rahim was genuine, built on mutual respect and trust. It was not dictated by tradition, gossip, or expectation, but by the understanding they shared, the patience they offered each other, and the small moments that had slowly grown into something meaningful. The weeks passed peacefully for Amina and Rahim, yet the calm could not last forever. The villagers' curiosity and whispers grew louder, and with it, the pressure surrounding the arrow incident began to feel heavier. Everywhere Amina went, she noticed eyes following her, some filled with admiration, others with judgment. People spoke behind her back, speculating about what she should do. Desk. Surely she cannot ignore the arrow forever, one elder said. The mark of fate is clear. She must agree to marry the one who caught it.
Amina felt a cold weight in her chest whenever she heard such words.
She had always been independent and proud of her ability to make her own choices. Now, the expectations of the entire village seemed to hang over her like a cloud. Every friendly glance from Rahim, every smile or kind gesture, suddenly felt like it might be misunderstood by the villagers. She tried to focus on her practice and the quiet moments she shared with Rahim, but it was impossible to ignore the gossip that followed her wherever she went. One morning after an early practice session, a group of villagers approached her while she was resting under a tree. Their tone was polite, but their eyes held a certain expectation. "Amina," one elder began, "we have heard of your skill and of the arrow incident. It is time to consider your future. Rahim is a good man. It is only right that you accept him as your life partner." Amina's heart raced. She felt trapped, as if the life she had carefully shaped for herself was suddenly being dictated by others. I appreciate his kindness," she said, keeping her voice steady. "But my choices are my own. I cannot let tradition decide my life." The elder frowned. "Bet. Tradition exists for a reason. It guides us and protects our ways. Do not dismiss it lightly." Amina clenched her fists but did not speak. She felt anger rising, mixed with fear. She could see Rahim approaching from the practice field, and her heart leapt at the thought of his presence. He arrived quietly beside her, sensing the tension without a word being spoken. Rahim turned to the villagers, his voice calm but firm. "Amina's life, her choices belong to her alone. No arrow, no tradition, and no gossip can dictate what she decides." Breath. She will choose for herself, and that choice must be respected.
A silence fell over the group.
The villagers had not expected such words. Some were shocked, others seemed to admire Rahim's honesty and respect. Yet, the whispers did not end. They only shifted to wondering how long Amina would resist the pressure. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Amina sat quietly near the river, skipping small stones across the water's surface.
Rahim sat beside her, their shoulders almost touching, but giving her space.
The water rippled with each stone, and Amina found herself lost in thought. She loved the way Rahim respected her decisions, but she also wondered if she could ever reconcile the growing feelings in her heart with the pressure of the villagers. Grasp. Rahim broke the silence gently. "You seem troubled tonight," he said. "I am," she admitted. "People. Everyone keeps watching. They talk. They expect. I feel as if they are waiting for me to make a choice I am not ready to make. Rahim nodded. I understand. And I will never ask you to make a choice before you are ready. Your heart must guide you, not their words. Amina looked at him, her chest warming with gratitude. She realized that what she felt for Rahim was no longer just admiration or curiosity. It was something deeper, something she had not anticipated. She was drawn to his kindness, his patience, and the way he always seemed to see the real her, beyond the gossip and expectations. Yet she remained cautious. I am afraid, she confessed. Afraid that if I give in to these feelings I might lose my independence, or that I might make a mistake. Rahim smiled softly. Love is not about losing yourself. It is about finding someone who walks beside you, who respects you, who encourages your strength.
I am not here to take anything from you, Amina. Only to be by your side if you wish it.
Amina felt a tear prick at the corner of her eye. His words were sincere, filled with honesty she had never experienced before. Ration. She realized that her fear was not of Rahim, but of losing control over her own life. And with him, she felt she could face that fear safely. The days following that evening were filled with quiet reflection. Amina spent time practicing alone, thinking about what she truly wanted. She knew that Rahim cared for her deeply, but she also knew that her choice must come from her heart, not from pressure or expectation. She wanted to be sure that any decision she made was truly hers. Meanwhile, Rahim continued to be a steady presence. He helped with village tasks, assisted the elders when needed, and occasionally visited Amina at the field. Yet he never imposed, never demanded, never let the villagers' expectations influence his behavior. He understood that respect and patience were the keys to a lasting bond. One day, a sudden challenge arrived. A neighboring village announced a friendly archery competition, inviting skilled archers from surrounding areas. The villagers immediately suggested that Amina should compete, implying that Rahim's presence was part of her duty to represent the village and honor the arrow incident. Amina felt her frustration rise. Why do they always assume my life must revolve around what others think? She asked Rahim as they walked to the competition field. They do not understand, he said gently. That is why your choices must come from you alone. No one can dictate your path, not tradition, not expectation, not even skill. Bust. At the competition, Amina faced archers of all ages and backgrounds. She felt the weight of expectation, both from the villagers and from herself. Rahim stood quietly at the sidelines, offering words of encouragement without pressure. His presence gave her courage, allowing her to focus on the target rather than the whispers behind her. As the competition began, Amina's skill shone through.
Arrow after arrow flew with precision, and the crowd began to cheer.
Breaths. Some of the villagers who had pressured her before now watched with admiration. Rahim's quiet pride was evident in his gaze, but he did not seek attention or claim her success. It was hers, fully and completely.
After winning the competition, Amina was approached by the elders. They looked at her with a mixture of respect and curiosity.
Prove. You have proven yourself. One said. And Rahim has shown patience and respect. Perhaps we have underestimated the strength of your bond.
Amina felt a sense of relief.
She realized that respect and patience were more powerful than force and tradition. Her independence was intact, and her connection with Rahim had deepened, but she could now see that love and choice could coexist, and that her feelings for him were genuine, not influenced by external pressure. That evening, as the sun set and painted the sky in hues of orange and gold, Amina and Rahim walked through the fields. The villagers gave them space, recognizing the strength of their bond. Amina felt a sense of peace, knowing that the difficult days of gossip and expectation were fading, and that her life was truly her own. "Thank you," she said softly, glancing at Rahim, "for standing by me, for respecting me, and for helping me see what is right for myself." Rahim smiled. "You did all the hard work, Amina. I only walked beside you. Express. Your courage, your strength, your heart, those are what made this possible." Amina looked at him, feeling warmth spread through her chest. She realized that she had found someone who did not seek to control her life but wished to share it with her fully, equally, and respectfully. It was a bond built on trust, understanding, and mutual respect, the foundation of a future that could be truly theirs. And though challenges still existed, Amina now understood that she had the strength to face them, and that Rahim would be there not to force or demand but to support and walk beside her. While choosing a path the pressures of tradition, gossip, and expectation, while choosing a path that reflected their true feelings. The arrow in midair, once a symbol of fate imposed upon her, had transformed into a symbol of choice, respect, and partnership. Amina now knew that her life was hers to shape and that with Rahim by her side she could embrace the future without fear. After the archery competition, the mood in the village had begun to change. People who had once whispered behind Amina's back now watched her with quiet admiration. They saw not only her skill but also her courage. The courage to make her own choices despite pressure and expectation. And they saw Rahim, standing by her side, calm, respectful, and patient, never forcing a decision, never demanding more than what Amina was willing to give. Slowly, respect began to replace gossip, and peace settled over the village. Amina, however, did not let the approval of others guide her feelings. She knew that her heart was the only compass she could trust. In the weeks following the competition, she spent time reflecting on her life, her dreams, and her growing connection with Rahim. She realized that her admiration for him had grown into something deeper. She cared for him, not because of the arrow incident or the whispers of villagers, but because of the man he was, kind, brave, patient, and understanding. Rahim continued to be a steady presence, always nearby but never imposing. He helped with village tasks, assisted elders, and shared quiet moments with Amina, always giving her the space to make her own decisions. He had never claimed the arrow incident as a reason to demand her hand, and that respect had slowly melted Amina's initial hesitation. She could feel herself opening up to the possibility of a future together. Not out of obligation, but because she wanted it. One evening, as the sun painted the sky in soft shades of gold and pink, Amina and Rahim sat on a hill overlooking the fields. The gentle breeze carried the scent of flowers, and the world seemed quiet, almost hushed, as if waiting for something important. Amina turned to Rahim, her heart pounding with a mixture of excitement and nervousness. "Rahim," she began softly, I have been thinking a lot about my life, my choices, and about us."
Rahim looked at her with calm, attentive eyes, encouraging her to continue.
"I realize now that I want to be with you," she said, her voice steady but filled with emotion.
Not because anyone expects it, or because of what happened with the arrow. I want to be with you because of who you are. Because you respect me, and because you have shown me patience and understanding. I trust you. Rahim's expression softened, and a gentle smile spread across his face. "Amina," he said quietly, "that is all I could ever hope for. I do not want anything else but to walk beside you, as you wish. Your choice is yours, and I am honored that you wish to share your life with me." Amina felt a wave of relief and joy wash over her. The fear that had once gripped her, the fear of losing her independence, of being forced into a decision, melted away. In its place was a calm certainty. She knew that with Rahim, she could be herself completely, without compromise or fear. The villagers had noticed the change between them. Many had begun to quietly support the bond, seeing that it was built on respect and genuine connection rather than tradition or pressure. Bast, some elders even approached Amina and Rahim to offer blessings, acknowledging that love and mutual respect were stronger than any old custom. The village itself seemed to shift, recognizing the importance of choice and the power of understanding over expectation. In the following weeks, Amina and Rahim prepared for a small celebration with the villagers. It was simple, joyful, and filled with warmth. There was no pomp, no pressure, only the coming together of people who had witnessed a story of patience, courage, and respect. Amina wore a simple dress, and Rahim wore his usual traveling clothes, but to them it did not matter. What mattered was the connection they had nurtured, the trust they had built, and the love that had grown naturally between them. On the morning of the celebration, Amina took one last walk to the practice field. She picked up her bow, feeling the familiar weight in her hands. She nocked an arrow and aimed at the target she had used countless times before. With a deep breath, she released it. The arrow flew straight and true, landing perfectly in the center. She smiled, feeling a sense of completeness. That arrow, which had once symbolized expectation and pressure, now symbolized choice, freedom, and the journey that had brought her here. Rahim arrived quietly, standing beside her. He did not speak, but his presence spoke volumes. Together they walked toward the villagers, hand in hand, ready to celebrate not just their bond, but the journey that had led them there. The villagers welcomed them with smiles and applause. There were simple decorations, food shared among neighbors, and laughter that echoed across the fields. Amina and Rahim moved through the crowd, receiving blessings and kind words. Every smile, every nod felt genuine, not forced.
The people who had once whispered about expectations now witnessed the power of patience, understanding, and respect.
Painting the sky in vibrant shades of orange and purple, Amina and Rahim stood together on a small stage prepared for the celebration. Rahim spoke first, his voice calm and steady. "This moment is not just about tradition," he said, looking at Amina with warmth. "It is about choice, respect, and understanding."
Amina and I have chosen each other not because of expectations, but because of the bond we have built. And it is that bond that we celebrate today.
Amina nodded, feeling her heart swell. "Yes," she said, her voice clear. "We have chosen each other freely, with respect, trust, and love. I am grateful for everyone here, and for the lessons we have learned together. This is not the end, but the beginning of a journey we choose to walk side by side."
The villagers cheered, some with tears in their eyes, others with smiles that reflected pride and happiness.
The air was filled with joy, not obligation. Amina realized that this was the first time she truly felt the village had witnessed love and choice without pressure. As she felt a deep sense of gratitude for Rahim, for herself, and for the journey that had led to this moment. After the celebration, Amina and Rahim walked to the practice field, now bathed in the soft glow of twilight. The air was cool and calm, and the world seemed at peace. Amina picked up her bow once more, nocking a single arrow. She looked at Rahim, who smiled encouragingly. She released the arrow, and it flew straight and true, landing perfectly in the center of the target. "That arrow," she said softly, "no longer belongs to tradition or expectation. It belongs to choice, trust, and the bond we share." Rahim took her hand gently. "And I promise to walk beside you, always respecting your choices and your strength." Amina felt a sense of completeness she had never known. The fear, the pressure, the whispers, all had faded into memory. What remained was trust, love, and a shared journey built on understanding. From that day forward, Amina and Rahim's bond grew stronger. They continued to practice archery together, explore the fields and forests, and help the villagers with their daily tasks. Their connection was admired by many, not because of tradition or expectation, but because it had grown naturally, patiently, and respectfully. And though life would always bring challenges, Amina knew that with Rahim by her side, she could face them with courage and confidence. Together, they had turned a single moment, the catching of an arrow in midair, into a story of choice, love, and partnership that would be remembered in the village for generations. The arrow had once symbolized obligation, pressure, and expectation. Now, it symbolized freedom, respect, and the beauty of two hearts choosing each other freely. And in the quiet evenings, as the sun set over the fields and the breeze whispered through the grass, Amina and Rahim stood side by side, knowing that their journey had only just begun, and that it would always be theirs to shape together.